further ado, I'm going to start. First of all, welcome everyone to our iConquerMS webinar today. What we call our webinar is a chat with Chat. It's just because my name is Chat, so I'm going to be the host of this webinar today. And just like to kind of briefly introduce how to use the Zoom function. If you have any question here, you can scroll down your mouse to the bottom, or maybe some computer maybe on the top, but I think quite likely going to be in the bottom. So look at the chat function, and if you have any question, and you don't want to interrupt or anything, please feel free to kind of type it in the chat function, or like the arrow kind of pointing out. So then somebody in our group will keep an eye on that, and then bring it up to the speakers today. Okay. So again, without further ado, I already introduced myself. My name is Chad. I'm a faculty at Auburn University at the Harrison College of Pharmacy. And today our webinar, we actually changed our format, our regular format. Normally we will have one or two speakers to talk with our community today, but today we have a few speakers which we're going to talk about how to be a research participant. Okay, and I kind of like to spend maybe 1 or 2 minutes talking about the two terms here. There's in fact, there is an article written by Ali Hall. She wrote an article entitled "What is in a Name: Research Participant versus Research Subject." And they may sound the same, but they actually subject and also participant. They may sound the same, but they may not. They are not the same at all. So research subject is really more like a traditional old kind of style term when we call people who actually participate in the research. But recently, we tend to kind of focus on kind of have to engage patients more in the research. So that's why we call more or less like a participant. So that means, in other words, bottom line is participant going to play a more active role, if you may, in research. And that is what we're going to talk about today. Okay. So I got quite a few speakers. I'm not going to introduce each of them, but I kind of like to ask our guests to briefly introduce yourself when you have a chance, when I throw the questions to you. So, and you can say your name and also, what do you do or anything like that briefly. Okay. So, and so I kind of like to start with, since we talk about a research subject versus research participant. Okay. So I kind of like to start with the researcher view. So my question is why patient-centered, why patient engagement in research is actually very important. So Stephanie, would you like to kind of respond to that question?
Yes, I'd love to. Thank you so much, Chat. And for those of you who don't know me, my name is Stephanie Buxhoveden, is how you say that very, very long name there. I am a person living with MS. I am a nurse practitioner who's treated MS patients, and currently I'm working on my PhD and going into MS research. So I'm here to talk from the research perspective, but I kind of have worn many hats, and I hope you all will have lots of good questions for me later. But really, there's so much more to research than drug trials. I think drug trials are what comes to everybody's minds when they say research. But honestly, we need to understand what causes MS. How do we predict how severe a person's disease will be? How do we choose the right therapy for each individual patient? And really even how we manage these debilitating symptoms that a lot of us face, right? Cognition, fatigue, things that are really debilitating. In fact, much like many of my fellow speakers here today, I myself have enrolled in a lot of research studies, including MRI imaging studies, exercise studies, and cognition studies. Now, I didn't get interested in MS research until being diagnosed with it about 10 years ago. And it was really striking to me when I was diagnosed how much we didn't know and still don't know. And then later, as I treated patients, I really wanted to contribute to the field by going into research. And being both a patient and a researcher has really shown me the importance of involving those who live with the disease every day, right? So clinicians see their patients maybe 2 hours a year, right? Twice a year for a single visit. But the patients are the ones who are living day to day, every single day, and experiencing this disease firsthand. And there's nothing like firsthand experience to inform research. And for instance, I did a study where I asked males with MS just about what they lived with on a daily basis and what their experience was. It was a qualitative study. And I found out that we had completely different takes, even though we had the same disease. It was almost as if we didn't, right? And we hear this all the time, that MS is like the snowflake disease and everyone's different, right? But we truly don't understand why that is. We need to know why men have more severe MS, why they have worse symptoms. We can't learn if we aren't including everyone and all these different stakeholders, because different groups of patients have very different experiences and very different disease presentations. And that's really why these research networks are so important, right? So we need patients at the table with scientists, with clinicians, asking questions, driving the research, number one, that's most important, but also most impactful to us, right? We need more people to join our network, more patients, more caregivers, more people just interested in helping out and to participate in our surveys, which I hope we're going to talk a little bit more about in a little while, so we can follow along with their journey and learn how MS behaves in different people over decades. And this type of data really simply didn't exist before iConquerMS, and we're really starting to see exciting results come out of it. Check out our new research website, right, where we actually are starting to report the results of some of these studies we're doing with this database. The other really critical thing, and I've felt this being a patient in research studies where, you know, I give time, lots of time. I've spent 20, 30 hours in some studies getting MRIs, and then I never hear a thing, right? Nobody ever calls me again. They might pay you, they might thank you for your time, but nobody sends me the paper, nobody sends me the presentation afterwards. So I think that's what makes these patient-powered research networks very, very different and very important, because we are openly sharing the results of the studies that you all are participating in. Unfortunately, research has historically been a very competitive field. It can be cutthroat at times. Open communication is not always the norm because sometimes it's a career threat. And obviously that's not how it should be. So now every researcher who uses our patient-powered research network is actually required to report their results back. And those results are reported not only to the people who took place in the study, but for the general public, for other scientists and clinicians to read and digest and spark new ideas and piggyback onto. And you're probably thinking, well, of course, duh, yeah, that's how we should, of course, be doing research, but that's really not the norm in the traditional research world. And honestly, it's probably significantly slowed our progress. So that's my 2 cents.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. And I kind of like to ask the same question. I see Dr. Hardy, Yolanda Hardy, already kind of with us now. So same question to you, Yolanda. You know, why do you think that patient-centered research is important? You know, why we need to engage patients in the research from the get-go?
Thank you. And sorry I was late. I had a little bit of computer issues. I'm going to answer the question kind of from 2 perspectives. One, as a pharmacist that does research, but the other is as a patient living with MS that has participated in research for MS. And I think it's very important that patients or people living with certain illnesses are involved in the research from the very beginning, because essentially we are the ones that are living with the condition on a daily basis. And it's very important that we understand, or that we help researchers understand, the study design that you have or what you're trying to look for. This is how it's going to impact us on a daily basis. You know, so if I want to create a study in which a person has to take a medication 3 times a day, write down notes 3 times a day of their effects, but I have a full-time job, or I'm spending time with my family, or maybe because of my MS, I am tired and, I'm trying to use those 3 hours or those 3 times a day to do something different. We would need to tell the researchers that, hey, is there another way that you can find that information out that's helpful? And we can provide that information in a very realistic way, which is very important. The other part of it, and Stephanie mentioned it too, after the research is over, the goal is whatever we're presenting or whatever we're finding out in the research, this is going to help move medicine forward. This is going to help move treatments forward. But we're the ones as patients that are going to be taking the medication and the treatment. And we want to give that feedback to the researchers before the drug is out and being used to let them know, hey, this is why people may not take this medication, or these are some of the issues that we've encountered. And so being able to address that while we're doing the research is actually going to cause whatever the outcomes are, the treatments, the medications, to actually be better utilized, because the researchers are getting the real world experience of people who would be taking these medications or utilizing these treatments, and they can make changes to it before it actually goes out to the actual community. So I think that's very important that from the beginning, all of us patients that are living with illnesses, all of us that are living with MS, that we are vocal from the very beginning from the research, because at the end of the day, we're the ones that are going to be benefiting from whatever the outcomes are. And we'll be doing that lifelong, and we're going to be living with it lifelong. So we want to make sure that our input is there from the very beginning.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hardy. And by the way, Dr. Hardy is a faculty at the Palm Beach Atlantic University in Florida. So now we all see why we need to engage patients in research. Why is so-called patient-centered research is very important. I hope that you feel as a patient, as a family members of the patient, you feel encouraged that you like to kind of be more participant to the research instead of the subject. So I kind of like to shift the gear, and talk with the patients now who actually have been involved and have some experience, engaged in research before. And we have 3 patients with us today. So, and they're going to share anything else. All right. So to share the experience with us. So I have 3 questions for these 3 individuals, but I'm going to read these 3 questions out. Okay. So the first question is, what made you get involved or participate in research? That is the first question, and I can remind you again later for the second and the third question. So, and then the second question is, how did you get involved? And the first one, what made you get involved? The second one, how did you get involved? And what's about your experience so far, after you engage in research? And I kind of like to go with Anita Williams. Anita, I know you're on the phone. Are you still on? Anita, I think she's not here. I'm going to move to the second person. So Lindsay?
Sure. Hi, everyone. Thank you, chat. My name is Lindsay Santiago, and I'm a person living with MS. And I'm also work for the Accelerated Cure Project and help iConquerMS as well. My experience with research was I was diagnosed with MS about 12 years ago. I was 25 years old. I really didn't know much about research at all. I didn't know much about MS either. And my neurologist at the time at a teaching hospital was very involved in research. And I was lucky for that reason, because he was the one who introduced me to the Accelerated Cure Project's biorepository and asked if I would become a participant. And he kind of explained the value of participating in MS research, and that just a little bit of what I can give can really go a long way. So I signed up. I said, sure, it's all sounds good to me. And I donated some blood samples and gave my data. And since then, I've really been after volunteering at the Accelerator Project, understanding the importance of research, because as someone living with MS, we really want to find a cure, or not even a cure, but learn answers. As Stephanie says, what causes it? Why was I diagnosed with it? There are so many questions out there, and without my participation and others, these questions can't be answered. And from doing the one study, then I was, asked to do others. And I felt like if there was no, harm in a sense to me as the kind of participant, then my data is something that can be used in the future. And if it doesn't help me, maybe it can help somebody else. And that's kind of the way I looked at it. And from then on, just really believe that research is so powerful and the way to go, because, my disease progressed not like how I thought, and not like my neurologist probably from the beginning thought. And why is that? And, to looking into those findings, and to, being able to do the image studies, and to provide my personal reported outcomes on iConquerMS, and to share those, just being able to speak with people. And it's great to, donate your time to different organizations. But if I can donate something that's really valuable, I donated my blood 12 years ago. It's something that's still being used and still being, looked at, and scientists use it. And, it's kind of the gift that keeps on giving, I feel like. And, as long as, my feeling is that whatever I can do to help someone else living with MS, not just myself, the better it is. And as long as it's not, harmful in any way, I believe it's so important, and I'll do it. Just, the way I go to, a doctor, and there's a resident in with the doctor. I feel like as long as everything is safe, like they need to learn, let the resident perform the procedure. How else are they going to learn? Again, how else are we going to find out what the cause of MS is without me giving my data and participating?
Mhm.
And Chad, I don't know if I missed one of the questions, but please let me know if I.
Not really, and I definitely can circle back to you. So
Sure.
yeah. Yep.
Okay.
So before I go to Laura, I'd just like to check if Anita is with us. Anita, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Oh,
yes,
yeah.
my Zoom. I apologize. My internet decided that it didn't want to
No
work
apology
half an hour
needed,
before.
Anita. You're fine.
First, thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak as a person living with MS, because what you do is the embodiment of patient-centered, and being exactly what iConquer is about. So thank you very much, Chat.
Mhm.
The first thing I would say was what made me decide to get involved in research.
Yep.
My name's Anita Williams. I'm an African-American woman living with MS. My initial diagnosis was in October of 2014, and my final determination was in February of 2015. And what made me decide to get involved with research actually happened when I was initially diagnosed. My diagnosis was a complete accident, but ultimately I went from a nosebleed to MS in 2.5 hours. And while I was in the ER with my initial diagnosis, one of the first things that the attending physician said to me is, 1, we think you have multiple sclerosis. 2, you're not going to die. And 3, I see that you have your phone with you. Why don't you take a moment to do a little bit of research while I go fill out the paperwork? And when I did that first search for multiple sclerosis, I did it for multiple sclerosis and African American. And what I found, even looking through Google Scholar, was that there was a tremendous dearth of information about how multiple sclerosis presents itself, advances, and affects African Americans. And it was at that point that I thought, wow, research. This is something I'm extremely interested in, something that I might want to think about participating in. And that chance came a lot faster than I thought, because later in November, because they didn't know if I had multiple sclerosis, because my medical history had no indication of MS in any way, shape, or form, they needed to do lumbar puncture. I wound up actually having 2. And it was during the second one, while I was actually laying on the exam table because they had to use an x-ray, they said, well, we're here taking a vial of your spinal fluid. Would you mind, us taking an extra vial for research? And so, remembering the experience I had sitting on the exam table in the emergency room, my initial answer was absolutely. I wanted to be a part of the solution of having more information for African American people living with multiple sclerosis. And in exchange for my agreement to participate, they got to show me the vial of spinal fluid. So that was my initial trade-off in doing that. And that was how I initially got involved in research, was just, being curious about it when I was first diagnosed, but then having that immediate opportunity right away to participate was just, for me, an extraordinarily fortunate circumstance, and one that I was really excited and proud to be a part of in terms of participating. That was my initial one.
Okay.
In February 2015, I had my actual official diagnosis with multiple sclerosis. And at that point, because I had no other disease-modifying therapies or anything else, they asked me if I wanted to participate in a drug trial. And again, I said yes, I absolutely want to participate. And a lot of it's because the research that we do know about multiple sclerosis in general, and what we know about it in African Americans, happened because other people said yes. My path and journey through multiple sclerosis has been a much, much smoother journey than just about anybody else I know. I haven't had a lot of the bumps and rocks and the detours. And so for me, I was standing on the shoulders of other people. And the reason why my journey was easier, the reason why I was able to choose from a couple of different oral therapies or injections, et cetera, is because other people said yes to research. And I felt that I personally had an obligation to participate because I had benefited so much from that, and I wanted to be able to give back. I additionally had the chance to participate in research that's not clinical or drug research. And those have been questionnaires, those have been follow-ups to my therapies, all of those things. And it's important, and I believe that both Stephanie and Yolanda touched on this, is research isn't always about giving fluids, blood, spinal fluid, et cetera. It's not about always doing a drug trial. You can participate in research in a myriad of different ways, and every single one of them is extremely valid and extremely important. And I don't want anyone to feel like because they're not in a clinical trial or they're not, being asked to participate in a drug therapy, that their voice and their input is not important. It's absolutely essential. It is so needed, and everyone is so grateful for any bit of participation that you can do. Mm-hmm. And lastly, my experience has been really good. Even though sometimes there hasn't been a give back that I would like, the people that I've worked with have been very upfront about what they were looking for, upfront about what they were asking of me, and very transparent. And where I have had give back, that's also been a great experience to know exactly what happened or what did they find with the information that I was able to give them. And overall, I am pleased with the amount of of help that I've been able to give researchers. And I really just see what I'm doing as help. And not just so much help for myself, but help for other people that are going to be diagnosed with MS today, tomorrow, 5 years down the road, or however many years down the road. And so that is why I'm really passionate about research. A lot of my focus has been getting more African Americans into clinical research and other research. But again, I just have a passion for research because that is the foundation for everything we know about MS and everyone that has it, at whether it is relapsing, remitting, secondary, primary, progressive, and research to me is the basic foundation for everything. So I hope I've covered the questions. And again,
Yes,
thank you for asking me to speak.
Yep, definitely. Thank you so much, Anita. And so far, we can tell that, you know, different people have different paths. What's about your path, Laura? Would you like to share with us?
Oh, hi, everyone. I'm Laura Koliskowski. If you've been on these webinars before, then you're familiar with either my face or my voice. I function as what we now call the lead patient representative for iConquerMS, and I came to that in a really serendipitous way. My background is in the humanities and not like all these science people that you're hearing from with the rest of the team. My schooling, I'm old enough to have been taught to question who, what, when, where, why, and how. And almost every day I'm confronted with that process of who happened, who has MS, what caused it, when did they get it, where did they get it, why did they get it, how can we cure it? And I'm really passionate about this to the point that I'll do whatever it is that I can take. When I was diagnosed to help, when I was diagnosed in 2008, my neurologist, I immediately said to him, what can I do to help people better understand MS? And he said, well, wait a minute, let me check with my study coordinator. And he came back, and even though I was only 54 at the time of being diagnosed, he said, I'm sorry, you're too old. There's nothing you can do for us. And then accidentally, I ended up connecting with the Accelerated Cure Project through him and did the same repository donation that Stephanie did. I said, please take all of my blood if you want, because somehow or another, there's got to be an answer in there. Being in Ohio, I don't have the benefit of having the major centers like they have on the East Coast, or perhaps with Anita there in Denver. But I do have the ability to connect with people remotely. So I've only done one clinical trial that actually involved drugs, and that was a symptom management drug and not a disease modifying therapy. But I have had the opportunity to do numerous quality of life studies. When I was first diagnosed, what kind of spurred what lit the fire under me and really got me going with this was when I was early diagnosed, I was active in an online community discussing all the latest MS news, blah, blah, blah. We would pass things back and forth. And we had the best time in the world ripping apart a research study that came out that was flash, brand new news. People with MS fall more often than people without MS. Let that sink in a minute. What brilliant person had to study that? I'm like, okay, that's a great concept, but we took that research and pieced it apart because they came up with the conclusion that people with MS fall more often, but there was no solution to that problem. We identified the problem, but what is the solution? And the way that PCORI, the Patient-Centered Outcome Research Institute, is constructed, all of the studies that go on, all the research are intended, require you to include people with a condition. The participants must be at the table, and we must be addressing questions that improve the outcomes. It is not sufficient to say, oh, we know XYZ about people with MS. We need to know the ABCs of how to correct those problems. And we're accomplishing that, I think, a lot through the studies that we're helping to promote through the iConquerMS portal. I know we've got the link up there as to where you can see the studies that we've done so far. You won't find anything like people with MS fall more often, fortunately, because our studies are selected by people who do have multiple sclerosis to begin. I shouldn't say selected, but they're approved by. There's a whole vetting process that the research that we're going to do is going to be meaningful to our community. And I think that's really important. You know, I don't know a whole lot about the scientific process of doing studies, but I do know the process from the humanities side of participating. And I think that's one of the key things that we can do through iConquerMS is help researchers understand how to include participants at the table in a meaningful way and how to break down those barriers to get us to participate. It's not just enough to say, oh, I need people in this age range to come forward and help us with this study. They need to consider, like, what are the barriers to getting you to help? You know, if you're doing a blood study, I'm really proud of, we're doing with CoverMS right now, looking at COVID responses for COVID vaccine responses in people with MS. And as one of the things that we're offering to participants in this trial, if it's a burden to go to the labs to donate blood, it can be arranged for a phlebotomist to come to your house. That's really important. You know, if you look at the demographics of people with multiple sclerosis, where young women supposedly who get it from the age of 20 to 50, well, young women at that age oftentimes have young children, have family. How do we accommodate people with children to ask them to come to the laboratory and spend all day in clinic participating in a research study? And as much as we want to help, perhaps there are those barriers, but by being able to do quality of life studies and the things that we're able to accomplish through iConquerMS, I believe we've really taken down those barriers and opened up the ability for everyone to participate, regardless of demographics, regardless of location, and especially in my case, regardless of age. At 67, I will never again participate in a clinical trial sponsored by a drug company because I have aged out. But I'm still taking drugs. I still have MS. I still have issues day in and day out. I still have an opinion, in case you can't tell. So anyway, did I answer your questions, Chat?
Yes, very well, Laura. Yep. As I said, you know, this is more like a conversation kind of webinar. So I kind of like to move forward to the, you know, iConquerMS role a little bit. And then, you know, we will come back and, you know, talk about, you know, either, you know, a question and answer, and, you know, our speaker may have opportunity to share the experience again. All right, Laura. So let me move to Sarah and Holly. So then I got I got a question for you, Sarah. You know, what, I mean, you are the you lead the iConquerMS right now. And I kind of like to hear your perspective, why the research community is important. Why? Yep.
Sure, yes. So hello, everyone. I'm Sarah Loud. I'm the CEO of Accelerator Cure Project. And ACP is the nonprofit that's behind iConquerMS. So we're the sort of leading sponsor for that. And it's so great to have you all here. So I just want to say thank you. And I was thinking, as I was looking at all of your faces, that in some ways, this webinar is sort of a reflection of the way that we do our work in iConquerMS, which is, you know, by bringing together people affected by the disease and researchers, clinicians, funders, to all work together to address the needs and priorities of people affected by MS. The idea for iConquerMS was born, oh gosh, I don't know, 9 years ago or something, when we realized, along with others in the research and care community, that research needs to be done in a way that centralizes the needs and priorities and perspectives of people who are the lived experience experts, those people who are diagnosed with the disease and also their caregivers. And so both Laura and Lindsay mentioned the ACP repository. That was a clinic-based study that we did for a number of years. And so we kind of tongue-in-cheek describe iConquerMS as taking the repository out of the clinic and into people's homes to make research participation available to anyone, regardless of age, regardless of ability, regardless of type of MS. And Patty, to refer a little bit to your question, you know, regardless of how their course of MS is going and how they're choosing to treat it. And so iConquerMS, again, was formed with the idea of centralizing the needs and priorities of people affected by MS. And we built in collaboration with people living with the disease, Laura and Stephanie and others, some of the folks on this call, researchers and clinicians, we built the initiative together. We decided what was important for iConquerMS to be able to do, to be able to ask, to be able to support. And I should say, I made that sound like it's a done deal. It isn't. It's constantly growing and evolving with the input of these stakeholders, with the input of people living with the disease and caregivers and all of the folks I just mentioned. And so what we're trying to achieve with iConquerMS touches on so many of the things that some of the other folks on this call have already said. We know that people affected by MS should have a say in what research questions get asked and answered. So what should get studied and how the studies should be designed? How can they meet the needs of the people that we want to participate in them, as Yolanda said? And then also how success is measured. You know, many clinical studies or other research studies have very specific endpoints. You know, there's a success measure that may or may not reflect what the person living with MS needs from that treatment. So very oftentimes research is focused on mobility, which obviously is an extremely important aspect of life, but maybe there are other elements that people living with the disease would want to contribute to telling us how studies should be designed and how the success should be measured. And then Stephanie mentioned that we've been doing a lot of work on improving the way that we give back the results of the studies that we support to the participants. So people living with the disease need to have a say in how the evidence that's generated, how that gets brought into their lives and acted upon, both in terms of the decisions that they make today and the decisions that they make in collaboration with their healthcare providers. Chat started off our webinar by making the distinction between subject and participant. I'd actually want to take it a little step further and say our iConquerMS members are research partners, right? So they're partners with us, with the Accelerated Care Project, they're partners with researchers, they're partners with healthcare providers. So there's lots of different ways to participate in iConquerMS, and I know many of you are already members, but I'd love to touch on a couple of them. I think both Laura and Stephanie mentioned Real MS. So this is our longitudinal study that helps us collect data to better understand what it's like to live with the disease. And we've already touched upon the fact there are so many different experiences for people living with MS. And so to bring those all together in a large scale. You can share your research questions through the Our Questions Have Power part of the initiative. If you haven't already checked it out, it's a really cool part of the website, and the CoverMS study that Laura mentioned actually was born out of that. We can invite you to participate in deeper conversations with researchers. We host focus groups and task forces and steering committees. And I'm going to put a plug in here. The way that we select people for those things is by looking at Real MS data. So if you are interested in taking that next step and being really involved in the conversations, we need your baseline data in order to know, oh, so-and-so out there actually has had this experience of living with MS and would be a perfect fit for this focus group or for the steering committee. And you can also consider raising your hand to be even more involved, to be part of governance. Laura mentioned that the research studies that get done get approved by our research committee, get approved by people living with MS. We have an engagement committee and a governing board, and as I mentioned, some steering committees too. Always bringing together people affected by the disease, including those diagnosed with it and caregivers, to help inform the next steps of the work that we're doing. So I'm going to turn it over to Holly. I think you have a question for her, Chat.
Yes, indeed. Thank you so much, Sarah. And I really love your term that, in fact, the partner, right? So that is actually a really powerful term. So Holly, I have a question for you. I know that you have tons of experience, working with both researchers and also with the patient community, and sometimes you need to communicate and connect them and bridge them. So how can you actually share your experience in driving this type of again so-called patient-centered research?
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, Chat. I'm Holly Schmidt. I'm an employee of Accelerated Cure Project, Vice President of Scientific Operations, and I'm also a research committee co-chair for iConquerMS. And I have the great pleasure of working with researchers who are interested in doing projects with iConquerMS and also with our research partners who are the iConquerMS members, and bringing those communities together to produce patient-centered research. So there are a lot of ways that iConquerMS supports patient-centered research and helps to drive it. I'm going to go over just a few ways in which we do that for the benefit of the research that iConquerMS conducts, but also for the greater good of MS research in general. There's a lot of ways that we incorporate member input into research conducted within iConquerMS, so that's where I'll start. Sarah mentioned the Our Questions Have Power program. That is a program that helps us get input into choosing what we want to research in iConquerMS, or also we can make that available to other researchers as well who are interested in knowing what does the MS community want. The Our Questions Have Power program solicits research questions from iConquerMS members, and you can also vote and comment on the topics that other people propose. So it's a great way of having your voice heard in terms of what we should be studying. Our first topic that was launched year and a half ago maybe was COVID-19. And so as Sarah mentioned, we took those questions that were proposed and have incorporated those into the CoverMS study. But those questions are still up, and you can even propose new questions on COVID-19 because, unfortunately, the virus has not been conquered yet. So if you are feeling like there's more that needs to be done, then you can pop your question there. And then we also have another topic, which is MS symptoms and their treatment and management. And we're currently collecting questions on that topic. And we'll be developing a research agenda that are based on the questions and the comments and the votes on that topic. So again, if there's something that you want to know or you want researchers to take a look at related to MS symptoms, please visit the Our Questions Have Power area and propose and comment and vote. And you can also propose other questions too, even if they're not on those topics, because we look at all the questions that are sent in, and if they don't belong to those two topics right now, we'll just save them for later. We'll be releasing other topics as we go. So that's one avenue for helping to shape the research that iConquerMS conducts. Another one is to provide input as we develop individual studies. You may have seen, depending on how long you've been a member, from time to time, a survey come your way where we've got a study that we're thinking about conducting, but we want to get community input into how important a study is this. And, if we were to conduct this study, would you participate in it? And do you have any feedback on how the study looks to be conducted? So we always get, at least a few hundred responses to those surveys. They're very short surveys, and the responses are really super helpful, especially the open text questions. We look at those ourselves, and then we share them with a researcher who's behind the study. And I can tell you, they're always provide some new and valuable insights into the study topic. And even if the suggestion can't be incorporated because, maybe that part of the study is already set in stone, I can guarantee you that the research, as well as we at iConquerMS, learn, and that will help us shape additional studies down the road. So please keep an eye out for those surveys as they come your way, and there will be more in the future as new studies come around. We also, if we're developing a new survey, if we're working with a researcher who's developing a new survey, we might ask people in the iConquerMS community to be a guinea pig, a test participant to see if the survey is worded in the right way, if we are leaving anything important out. So we have a set of volunteers that we go to for that. And that's always, again, very helpful. And we always find that we've made mistakes when developing a new survey. So that advanced input is really, really helpful. And then finally, there's often in the surveys open text questions. And Sarah mentioned Real MS. And in each of those Real MS surveys, there's a question at the very end that says, what else would you like us to know about this topic? And we look at those comments also, and that helps us update iConquer or update Real MS, and as well as keep in mind for other topics that we choose to analyze. We also ensure that people with MS are a key part of the research project approval process. We have a research committee. I mentioned I'm co-chair of that. And before any research study is launched within iConquerMS, it has to be approved by the research committee. And there are some current and former members of the committee here on this Zoom today. So Yolanda and Seth and Janine are some of the people I can see right now who are or have been members. And they're people with MS. In fact, at least half of the people on the research committee, as well as some other standing committees and boards, have to be people with MS, and that's how we make sure that research is approved as being in the best interests and as benefiting people with MS, not just benefiting some other group. So that's an important way that ensuring that the voice of the MS community is part of the research that we support. And then finally, we're also a major advocate for making research conducted by other organizations more patient-centered. Sarah mentioned that we support focus groups and advisory councils. Some of these councils are together for about a year, meet multiple times with the pharma company to provide really in-depth and valuable input into study design or outcome measures that are used in a trial. So we love to bring people together to advise companies and researchers on how their study can be more effective at benefiting people with MS, and also how their trial can be more feasible for people to participate in, because a study that's not feasible is not going to recruit or it's not going to retain people, and those results will never help people with MS. Finally, we also have a new body that's called the RIDE Council, which stands for Research Inclusion, Diversity, and Equity. And this is about 30 people with MS from iConquerMS that represent groups that have traditionally been underrepresented in research. Anita mentioned her interest in helping include more African American and women in research. And so African Americans are one group that has historically not been included. Other racial and ethnic minorities, gender minorities, many other groups have traditionally been left out of the research process. So the RIDE Council is aimed at helping iConquerMS be more inclusive and diverse, but also will be helping other researchers too, who understand the need to be more representative, to make sure that their results benefit everybody, not just the traditionally represented groups. But they may not know how to go about that. They may not know how to recruit or how to design their study to be beneficial to all. And so we're hoping to connect RIDE Council members with those researchers so that they can share their valuable expertise to benefit MS researchers and the MS community more broadly. So I will stop there. I could probably go on for quite a while, but I know that, Chat, you wanted to have a broader conversation and bring in some questions from the community here. So thanks for the chance to share some of those ways that we're helping research become more patient-centered.
Yep. Thank you so much, Holly. As I said before, iConquerMS has been super busy, as you can tell. And I really believe that if I ever give Holly more time, she has more to share. So thank you so much, Holly. But now it's going to be more or less like an exercise, for participating in, conversation. But as we make an announcement, we're more than happy if you just like to come and sit and listen and observe, which is definitely fine. But I just like to take this opportunity to give this opportunity to anyone, of us or any one of you who would have or like to ask any questions that you may have. Please unmute yourself and shout it out.
We do have a few questions in the chat if we want to start with those.
Yep,
Patty has her hand up. She proposed
Yep.
a few questions.
Yep, Patty, you need unmute yourself.
Hi. You know what? My questions are all in the chat, so I'll let it go through that.
Yep.
Yep.
Let me go. I actually can see some. Let me know if I missed it. Okay. I think one of your question is about really first question is about how do we kind of provide more opportunity to people who living with MS in the rural areas. That's I don't know. That is a great question, but I don't know who can actually help me answer this question. It's actually I met with my group from Mississippi and Alabama, and this it has been brought up as well, but I have no solution, no answer. Anyone like to share ideas here?
Yeah, it's very hard. That's something that we've struggled with. Patty and I have talked about this one-on-one, how we get more people from rural areas, because she lives in a rural area, but also drives 5 hours to be seen at an MS center and participates in research projects, including the one Laura mentioned where she gets blood drawn at home. But really, honestly, I think we need to get our fellow patients who live in those communities to advocate and get their friends, their own networks involved, because that is something we all struggle with. And I think that's one of the, I'm going to say, problems in MS research is that we're frequently sampling from the exact same pool of patients. They're usually either on the East Coast or the West Coast. They live within driving distance to an MS center. They're mostly Caucasian. They're mostly female. And these are patients who have access to high quality care, usually high efficacy DMTs, and they're not living the usual MS patient's experience. So I think that is a problem. And it's up to all of us to figure it out.
Yeah,
Even iConquerMS, which is, you don't have to go anywhere to participate in iConquerMS, but you do have to have internet access, and that's not guaranteed for everybody. Especially broadband is not equally available across the country. In rural areas, you're less likely to have access to that. Hopefully some of the federal programs will help with that over time. I don't know what we can do at iConquerMS about that. Would love to hear any ideas from people how we might be able to support those who would like to join iConquerMS but don't have the internet access to be able to do that.
Well, one thing I would like to point out in accessing people in rural communities is ACP and iConquerMS is a very strong partner with the National MS Society, and we also are actively involved with the MS Coalition, which includes MSAA, MS Foundation, Can Do MS, MS Views and News. So all of those organizations have their own network of people to reach out into communities, both in urban and rural areas. And I think that is one tool that we use pretty well in getting the word out by using, especially through the society, with them being a partner of ours, that we are working really closely with them to disseminate the information. So when we have something that we're launching, something we're announcing, not only does that come out through ACP and iConquerMS, but the majority of the time you will find an announcement of that on the society web pages as well and their press releases. So it's a partnership effort that everyone recognizes is still a weakness, and we're striving really hard to reach everyone.
Oh, good. Yep. Thank you. I see Paul. Paul, you have a question.
Yeah. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm Paul Jackson. I was diagnosed with MS relapsing remitting in 1993 when I just started grad school. In 1998, I finished my PhD in computer engineering from Texas A&M University, not from Texas. And when I finished from there, I went to work for Boeing in Seattle. I worked in augmented and virtual reality. I never told anybody where I was working that I had MS. In about 2010 or so, there's a big, huge organization, and I was let go, and I changed my career into digital video. And so I'm now 54 years old. I'm retired. I'm living in Tacoma, Washington right now with my darling wife, who also has MS. My question is that in 2019, I was diagnosed with this chronic lymphocytic leukemia, and I'm taking meds now. And my neurologist said I no longer have to take Tecfidera because the meds I'm taking for the leukemia work for MS. So I have a question about if you have two, like more than one chronic disease and your medication for one, how can it affect MS? Additionally, I'm on medical cannabis. So I'm taking a product from this company in South Seattle, I'm sorry, called Halo Cannabis. And they have a product called CB Jesus because it's got a high concentration of CBG and a little bit of THC. And so I find that very beneficial for me. I'm still ambulatory, I can walk around. Even though I did face plant earlier this year a couple of times, and so my wife bought me a rollator walker. It's an upright walker. And so I've been using that quite a bit. I haven't fallen since, and it helps me walk. I mean, it's an amazing thing. I'm also a co-lead on the Swedish MS Coffee Support Group that meets the first, third, and sometimes fifth Fridays from 1 to about 2:30 via Zoom. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm kind of active on that too. So, and I'm really interested in the whole medical cannabis thing. I put a link up to Montel Williams' his YouTube channel. He every week he has somebody come and talk about cannabis in relation to MS because he has MS also. And it's a shame that the U.S. government hasn't taken cannabis off the controlled substance list. But other than that, I ramble. So I'm done. Thank you guys for.
Paul, this is Laura. If I can interrupt you here for the sake of time. One thing is that you bring up is the study of cannabis. I'm sure you can understand the difficulty of trying to do a controlled, regulated study of that since there's not an approved substance anywhere except Sativex, so there's always that possibility. And that is a very common question that gets brought up, and you may have actually posed it through our iConquerMS questions before, and it's certainly one that we relay constantly and would like to also continue to express that to FDA panels, that this is something that as there's more acceptance within states, that this would be something we could look at closer. And kudos to you for living your best life here in Tacoma and Seattle. I'm really impressed. So I hope that you're an active part of our community here and that we'll see you even more, and that Holly will be able to reach out to you and say, hey, what would you like to do to help us, or Stephanie or Chad or any of us. So thanks for those great questions.
You're welcome.
I would love to respond too. I think you brought up several great points. The first that stuck out to me is, why is my chemo treating my MS? And if a very interesting thing about MS research is most of our disease modifying therapies were originally intended for completely different things. There are a number of disease modifying therapies that were chemo. Tecfidera has been used to treat psoriasis, Crohn's disease, other autoimmune conditions that we sort of accidentally figured out, hey, this also works for MS, right? So that's just another really important thing about research, and not truly understanding the underlying mechanisms of a disease. And sometimes by luck and sometimes by educated guessing, we figure out that some of these therapeutics off-label work for MS. So for instance, the disease-modifying therapy that I'm on started as a leukemia treatment and was used when I was in the clinic starting to see patients 10 years ago. We used it off-label for MS, and now it's an FDA-approved therapy that goes by a different name and is a slightly different molecule. And I see a lot of questions in the chat about, I'm too old, I'm excluded from drug studies, I'm not on a DMT, and I feel ostracized. All of these are really great points. And I do think drug trials specifically are very tightly controlled. Their inclusion and exclusion criteria are very tightly controlled. And that is unfortunate, but there are so many other studies that you can take part in if you don't meet the criteria for drug studies, for instance. And then another drug question was brought up: how do I convince patients to participate in drug trials when it's not guaranteed you'll be getting the active drug. And I will say these days, it's very rare to see a drug trial using a placebo arm. Most of them use another DMT as a comparison group. So that's less of a concern, but it still is tricky to decide to do a drug trial.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And just to add on to Stephanie's response, and yes, there are a number of agents that are used for cancer that are what are called B-cell depleting therapies. And through research, we've discovered that one of the ways that some of the new drugs for MS are being used is to basically deplete our B cells. And that came from initially from cancer research. And so depending on which drug you're on, which B cell it's actually attacking, some of those drugs for leukemia, for cancer, can actually be used for MS if they are targeting the same B cell that we're targeting with our MS therapies. And so in that case, it would make sense both from a kind of like the disease state mechanisms, but also financially, if you can just be on one drug that can address both diseases, it definitely is worthwhile for that.
Yeah, as we all know, when we start having fun, we're running out of time. So I'm so sorry to say this. We actually a minute or a couple of minutes late already. So I kind of like to wrap this up by saying, thank you for all the presenters and all the questions and all participation for today. And we have we like to hear from you. So Sarah just post the survey, for the feedback, and any question, any comments, please use that link and fill out that survey. And one more announcement that I like to make is on October 13th, we're gonna have another chat with Chad. We're going to talk about complementary and also alternative medicine. So stay tuned, and we'll make announcement, and hope to see you all on October 13th. 4 o'clock in the afternoon Eastern time. Again, thank you so much, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.